everybody. We're going to be talking about exercise, some kind of simple concepts to start breaking down in a little bit more detail. So Justin Springer is here to help us. He's the owner, head coach at Gorilla CrossFit.
Cool. So we get a lot of questions on when people first start working out or haven't worked out in a while. They say, I don't even know where to start or how do I approach my training. So when people also start it, they like to do it at home sometimes, or they go to a gym where they don't necessarily have a coach. So I just want to introduce three very simple concepts to help you get an idea of the kinds of movements and way you should be training. So the three things to remember are variance, functional movements, and then intensity. And this is straight out of the CrossFit playbook, and I think it's important to note that a lot of people see CrossFit maybe on like ESPN or on TV, and they think it's for very young, fit people. In fact, the methodology and the concepts apply to everyone. In fact, there's a great statement within CrossFit. They say the needs of an Olympic athlete and the needs of my grandmother vary by degree, not by kind. Meaning they should both be squatting, but the Olympic athlete may have 600 pounds and my grandma may have a PVC pipe squatting to a box. But the movement shouldn't change. So let's start with variance. We have three things we want to pull from variance. We have loaded movements, we have unloaded movements, and then we have what we would just call cardio. So a loaded movement would be using something like a barbell or a dumbbell or a kettlebell. Unloaded would be just body weight, a body weight squat, which we'll get into in a little bit, sit-ups, push-ups, anything like that. And then cardio, which you're typically going to be thinking about running, rowing, walking, jumping ropes, swimming, things along that line. So we take all of these three areas of movements and we pull from them only movements that we deem to be functional. What is a functional movement? It's a movement that you would see naturally in life, and it's basically a core to extremity movement. So we're going to start with squat today because it's the most functional thing we can think of. It's basically standing from a seated position. We all do that multiple times a day. We'll get into deadlifts later on. A deadlift is nothing more than picking something up off the ground safely. So we get more bang for our buck when we do functional movements. An example of a not a functional movement would be a tricep extension. Right? You see people do this in the gym all the time in front of the mirrors. Well, I'm just using one muscle group and one joint. And in life, I rarely ever do this motion. Now, I'm not talking about moving my hands when I'm talking. That's not really of any significance. I'm talking about picking up your kids, picking up groceries. You drop something on the floor, you need to pick it up, or getting up off of the floor. These very basic movements that are very much built into our DNA. So that's the functional part, and then the intensity part. So this is what scares people off quite a bit. But we know that growth only happens outside of our comfort zone. So early on, we're not too worried about this. We're worried about getting variance and functional movements mastered. So we follow a three-step approach: mechanics of the movement, then consistency of those movements, and then intensity. But ultimately, we gotta put you outside your comfort zone if we wanna see any real change. And so this is completely relative. Again, we talked about my grandmother and the Olympic athlete. Their versions of intensity are wildly different, and that's okay, that's expected, but that's the approach. So if you're putting together your own training program, you're looking for advice, or if something is good or bad, ask yourself, is there variance? Are the movements I'm doing functional? And do I have a place to put in intensity down the road? If you start with this as your blueprint, you can put together a solid training program, okay? So next, let's do a little workout that you guys can do at home.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to show you like a little example of something that we'll do at home. Really easy movements, but this is going to target fat burning. So when you're looking to really keep your weight loss up, this is going to be a really easy at-home workout that's really going to target that fat burning zone, which is kind of what we talk about a lot with always making sure to kind of go out of our comfort zone, get to some change, hit plateaus. This is a great way to break through those. Same thing when we talk about changing our food patterns and those kind of things. Okay?
Perfect. So what we're going to introduce to you guys is a very simple concept called Tabata intervals or Tabata training. So this was research done by a Japanese scientist who came up with this idea that 8 rounds, completing 20 seconds of work and 10 seconds of rest back to back, is an ideal weight loss and fat burning approach. So that's what we're going to do. You can take a bunch of different movements and do this concept. Today we're going to focus on the squat and the plank, very easily done at home, but we want to make sure we're doing them right. So Susie has about a picture-perfect squat. So most people don't start off looking like this, but she's worked at it for years and trained really well. So, but it's a good example of what we'd be aiming for in a good squat. So you'll first start with your setup, feet just shoulder width apart, and you're just standing neutral, right? So the 5 things we're looking for in a good squat: weight stays on the heels, knees are tracking over the toes, back stays straight, hips go below the knees, and we start the movement at the hip. So give me just 2 squats, Susie, as you would do them. Good. Nice, and then let's get a side view. Good, so go down and hold one for me. Right, so we see we got a nice straight back. My knees are tracking over my toes, hips are below knees. Perfect, okay? You should be able to wiggle your toes the whole time and keep that belly nice and tight. An easy scaling option, grab a chair, grab a bench, grab anything you need to do to sit on it, okay? And just come down, touch your butt, and come up. 1 second. Oh. Springer. All right. So that was a perfect looking squat. So the way this would work is we would run a clock, and there's apps all over the place that you can just download a Tabata timer and set the clock. And basically for 20 seconds, so maybe we just knock out 5 or 6 in a row. So if we said 3, 2, 1, go, you should be going as many as you can. Say 20 seconds was up, pause, she'd take a 10-second rest. And she would do that 8 times in a row, okay? So that's a great way to do it. If you haven't worked out for quite some time or done much movement for quite some time, ease into that, okay? I don't want to create so much soreness that you're having a tough time standing up and sitting down for a couple of weeks.
And the concept is to make sure if you can get the same number of reps each round, so pace yourself. And try to keep that level up so you're not starting off with maybe 10 squats in the first 20 seconds and ending with like 3. Try to really pace yourself and keep that consistent the whole time.
Absolutely. So if you do 8 rounds of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, that's 4 minutes. So another thing you can then add into is the next 4 minutes, the next Tabata interval is the plank. Very simple movement, great for maintaining midline stability, and good midline stability transfers to everything you would ever do in life. So a good plank is quite simple. Susie, she's on her toes, she's on her elbows. The number one thing I don't want to see is this sagging, right? I'm putting my spine in a compromised position, is not where I want to be. Her shoulders are directed over her elbows, her hips are just slightly above her heels. This is nice and solid. So she would hold this right here for 20 seconds, then she could rest, you could just drop to your knees or lay down, whatever you want to do. And then when 20 seconds starts back up, she pops right back up. Perfect plank, okay? So 2 easy movements you can put together. In total, you're looking at an 8-minute workout, very simply done at home. Spike your metabolism and your hormones for more fat burning, and very basic stuff.
Perfect.
Cool.